Mills. We have Josh Moe and Courtney Bormann. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and what they do, and they are going to go ahead and get us kicked off for this very first breakout session. So welcome, Josh and Courtney.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so yes, like she said, it's FinOps, not FinOOPS. So thanks for coming to our talk today. This is our first in-person talk in quite some time. We're used to the whole Zoom Teams thing, so bear with us as we work through that. But let's get to it. Clicker, wake up. My clickers, and there it goes. So first on the agenda, we're gonna do quick intros and background, and then we're gonna go through a good, the bad, and the ugly. So thinking about starting early, runaway costs, and some of the intersections of FinOps and other disciplines, and leave time for Q&A at the end. So first off, intros. All right, so I'm Josh Moe. I'm a senior enterprise architect at General Mills, focused on our cloud strategy as my primary focus. I roll up within our enterprise architecture, technology, and innovation organization, which is part of digital technology at General Mills. I've been with the company since 2008. I've had many different roles across the digital technology organization since then, and I've been a part of many key architectural decisions and lead roles since 2015.
All right, and I'm Courtney Bormann, and I lead our FinOps practice at General Mills. I'm also part of the digital and technology organization. My background, though, is in finance, so that's where I started my career out. I spent the first 7 years in finance before switching over to digital and technology, and then did project management, leading a lot of big IT implementations, especially with SAP around the globe for General Mills. And then just in the last 18 months, have switched into the cloud and global infrastructure space, first as part of leading our RFP, and then now in my new role with FinOps. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Josh to give you a brief background of General Mills, as well as our cloud journey, and then we'll hop straight into the good, bad, and ugly.
All right, thanks, Courtney. Oh, I forgot there are builds in this slide, the core of General Mills. Can I give you a little bit of background on General Mills, who we are? We are a food company, and our mission is really making food the world loves and needs. We've been a company for more than 155 years, and you can see some of the key brands that, probably a part of many of your cupboards every day are part of our corporation. More about the business here and our scale. We're an $18 billion company. We have 8 of our largest brands are greater than $1 billion in annual sales, 100 markets globally, and we have more than 36,000 employees around the globe. So pretty good scale, a large enterprise, but not the largest out there either. And you can really think about how we operate as a consumer packaged foods organization. So with that, jumping into our cloud and our cloud journey. Clicker. All right, so we really kind of started thinking about it in 2018. 2018, we were primarily on-prem. We've been running professional data centers ourselves for decades and running them really efficiently. And it was really 2018 when we started to feel like we need to start thinking differently and go into cloud. And really it was our data and analytics footprint on-prem that was really driving that. Data was rapidly growing, our analytics needs were really growing, and we were really taking advantage of that on-prem, but we knew that we needed to go to what was next. So we really started that focused cloud planning in 2018. Jumping into 2019, we jump-started an analytics program and a data strategy initiative and really started thinking about what's next, how we're going to activate it, and actually just did a light RFP from a data and analytics standpoint and started some initial POCs up in Google Cloud. 2020 got us to start to the scale point. Start thinking about the scale point. Started doing our data lake acceleration to cloud. We had a very mature data lake on-prem, and taking those practices to GCP, start taking them there, and not just lift and shift or rehost, but really reimagine it for the future and really those scaled capabilities that GCP could offer us. That was kind of the foundation. We also had worked with a couple of consulting firms to get after our cloud strategy, our cloud transformation strategy, and also our core platforms assessment. Getting into 2021, data analytics was scaling rapidly into the cloud, going really well, and we kind of thought about what's next, what's left in our data center, thinking of our SAP footprint, third-party applications, custom dev, everything that's not data analytics that was centrally hosted, getting that into cloud as well. So we started a broad-scale RFP with the major CSPs, ultimately decided on GCP as our primary cloud provider for that, and really working towards activation at the tail end of 21, and we're at full-scale activation in 2022. And we'll get a little bit more into that as we get through this presentation. So you can see, 2018, pretty much nothing, to 2022, going pretty well. And this picture kind of visualizes a little bit more, where 2020, 5% cloud, 35% in 2022, and really 65% in come 2024 is kind of our cloud presence as we see it. One thing you'll notice is we've got about 30% of our compute is sitting at the edge, and we foresee that staying that way for quite some time. And when we talk about the edge, we think of local compute in manufacturing locations or remote sales offices and things like that. And just given the nature of those workloads, local still makes sense for now. Now with time, that might shift a little bit, but right now that's how we see that framing up. So with that, we will jump into the good and starting early. So Courtney.
All right, thanks Josh for sharing a little bit of that background. And as you heard from Josh, right, we've really been rapidly growing our cloud footprint. So I want to talk a little bit about, General Mills practice. A few things I think we've gotten right or started off on the right foot. And the first one is really, FinOps at General Mills was born from our RFP. And so as part of, this selection process with a couple of cloud service providers, we had a lot of peer company calls and, would ask in those calls, what do you wish you had done differently? What are your key learnings? Time and time again, we heard, we wish we had better cloud cost control and we wish we had started earlier. And so that's really how my role came to be. And so actually the FinOps group at General Mills was started, about 3 months before we actually inked the deal with, as Josh mentioned, GCP as our major cloud provider for our data center migration. We started with a really small team, so about half of my time, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other accountabilities that I have later in the presentation, and then one analyst. About a year later, we're about a year into our journey, and we are now building that team out with a few more people. So adding to it half a head count of an engineer, as well as an optimization and compliance specialist, about half of her time as well. So exciting to be growing the team, but still quite small. The other thing that you see though is not just the immediate circle here of who's in FinOps with us, it's also all of our friends that surround us. So from finance to sourcing to our CSP cloud partners, they've all been really critical in helping us on our FinOps journey. And I want to just, call out a few roles here in particular. The first one that I would say is this guy standing next to me, Josh Moe, our cloud architect. He didn't say it, but he only spends about 20% of his time specific to FinOps. But the contribution he has is really outsized compared to that in terms of both building, technical prowess in other individuals, as well as setting the strategic direction and helping us with prioritization. So he's definitely been a key FOF or a friend of FinOps for us. Just a half step behind him, though, would call out, we have a fabulous data engineer, as well as a reporting whiz in Tableau that has really, brought to life the visualization and helping teams see what their spending is and get that information out in near real time, as well as helping with some optimization tooling. So I'm here to say building friends, not just important in grade school, but a critical skill for FinOps as well. And if you're wondering who makes a good friend, I suggest, a cloud architect, an engineer, or a data whiz would be a good place to start. So two other things, early on in our journey that have really been critical. The first is utilizing Agile, because when you have this small team, right, and as you guys know, there's so many different things to run after with FinOps, you have to really ruthlessly prioritize and make sure that you're consistent about delivering value. MVPs and proofs of concepts have really been our friends. And one example I'd give of this is our tagging. So when Josh and I both came into our roles about a year ago and we kicked FinOps off, our tagging consisted of an Excel spreadsheet. At that time, we had about 100 GCP projects. And we've both spent more hours than either of us has wanted to putting metadata into Excel. But we kicked off a strategy in the fall around tagging. We've been able to link to another on-prem system that we have that's custom developed. So now we have automated pipelines that bring our tagging into GCP, as well as allow it to be used for really dynamic reporting and The Excel sheet, we're both, I think, happy to say is dead and a thing of the past. So that's been really critical, right? It would have taken us months. It did take us months to build that, so we had to start with the Excel, but we've really been able to scale as we go. And then, the other point is really risk and value informing our prioritization. And Josh will talk next about, I think overall we've done a good job there, about where a little risk crept up on us, though. So important to think about both of those. And then last but not least is communication. And I think we do a pretty good job of this. It feels like I'm constantly in meetings communicating around FinOps. But I know that there's still more to do. So at General Mills, this looks like a bi-monthly meeting with directors where we update them on the strategy and the key activities. It also means that we're at a lot of staff meetings, that we send out a newsletter, that we add columns to other newsletters. And I would say not just who are we communicating to and when are we communicating, but what we're communicating has been really critical. And so it's not just what's in our plan, but it's also what's out. So for instance, we do have a presence with a couple of other cloud service providers. Right now, they're pretty small though. So in-depth analysis for those, it's out. We just don't have the staffing to do that. And then what's not now. So would love to do more on the training and the education standpoint, but just due to some other critical things on our roadmap right now, we've had to shift that out to the back half of our fiscal year. So on the next slide here, what I want to show you is when we think about our tools, see if we can get to the next one. Oh, there we go, perfect. When we think about our tools and what are the artifacts for FinOps that have been really critical on our journey, the first one up here is our FinOps roadmap. It highlights about 18 months of activity for us, so it's a historical 6-month look at what we've been up to, and then 12 months here rolling into the future. And we, no fancy tools needed. This is Excel right here, and just built it out. And you can see here the way that we're categorizing activities, we're actually using the Google framework. But I would say a variety, right? Whether it's another cloud provider or it's just the different inform, optimize, operate stages that you use, I think any of those could be effective. But this has been so critical for telling people what's in, what's out, and what's not right now. The second thing you see on this screen here isn't just how you'll know that I don't have a background in graphic design. It is our FinOps All-Star Award, and Josh was gracious enough, I put him on here, and he is in fact a FinOps All-Star. But we award this every month to an individual or a small group of people, and for the low price of a couple of Yeti mugs, we've really been able to incentivize, our engineering team to take action and to be invested in FinOps and optimization. So with that, enough of the good. I'll turn it back over to Josh here, and he's going to talk a little bit about the bad.
All right, thanks, Courtney. Get this to work. All right, so I'm going to go through a bad of a runaway cost scenario we had. As Courtney mentioned, we've been doing pretty well with this. We haven't had too much. And this is a scenario where we had planned to do some of this work later, but because of this incident, we pulled it forward in our prioritization. So we had a team that was doing some data analysis, and they didn't really have any guardrails around them. They had some guidelines they were following, but no guardrails that were yet in place. So they were iterating on a Tableau dashboard that they already had and the corresponding data model behind that dashboard. And they already had a very large data model behind this table, or behind this dashboard, and it was growing even larger. It became to be up to a 64 terabyte single table data model driving this Tableau dashboard. And the dashboard is actually on top of GCP's BigQuery PaaS data warehousing platform. And for those that are unaware, it's a fully PaaS managed platform, but they charge based on the default charge rate is $5 per terabyte of data scanned, which for simple things is great, not a problem. But when you have a 64 terabyte table and you're scanning a very large table, that can get very expensive very quickly. Additionally, since it's a PaaS platform, it performs really well even on large tables, even if it's not optimized. So the team didn't realize that they had missed something while doing this iteration. Through this iteration, they accidentally missed table partitioning and clustering on this very large table. It happened, it was there before they started iterating. While they were iterating, they accidentally excluded it from the script they were running, and they lost that optimization and part of their table. And so because BigQuery performs well, they didn't notice it, and they had gone on, iterated on their Tableau dashboard. Tableau generates queries against that table. Each of those queries are very complicated and expensive against that large table. And it was roughly $150 per query running from Tableau is what the charge rate was against that table because of the size and partitioning and clustering not being there. And so over 3 days, the team had racked up $88,000 in spend without even realizing it. So, through some of the work and some of the tooling we had in place, we found out about it after a couple days, or actually within like 2.5 days we found out about it. And we quickly got to the part of cleaning this up. So the next slide is what did we take for an action? And really it was quotas to the rescue. BigQuery or GCP in general has a bunch of quotas that you can put in place to manage and put guardrails around our spend. We didn't yet have guardrails, we put some guardrails in place quickly on this one. And 2 of them that are in particular for BigQuery is query usage per project per day and query usage per project per user per day. And for this particular use case, we put a quick quota on there of 100 terabytes a day for the project and 50 terabytes per day per user within that project. And really that capped spend at $500 a day. That's the most they could spend per day within that project. And in this particular case, the most they would have spent was $1,500 and not $88,000 across those 3 days. So that had been a quick guardrail to stop the oops, and the mistake in there. So a quick solve, and it was very easy to implement that ad hoc. But that was only step 1. We knew we needed to scale this across the organization, not just protect that project, but protect all projects running, GCP. So how did we do that? We looked at our historical usage in BigQuery. All that data is available within the GCP platform. You can see every query that's run, how much data it's scanned by project, by user, by day, et cetera. And so we were able to do some historical analysis around what teams are really doing. We came up with a default quota for the organization that we put like almost all projects in that default quota. And then we had like another 10 or so projects that are bigger, heavier users that we gave them special quotas because we knew that they have a business need for that. And so we rolled that out to the organization, getting good feedback on it, not stopping business development or delivering business value. Teams are able to keep on innovating and providing that value. But we've also given a way for teams to extend their quota when they need to, because we don't want to be a burden to them to providing that business value and innovating. So we've got a process to where teams can say, actually, I know I have 100 terabytes today or 200 terabytes today per day, but I really need 300. And so they can go ahead and request that, and that's a pretty automated process now to get that rolled out. So that was a quick way that we've, protected us from the oops, putting some guardrails in place, and then really just, educated and informing the organization as well. Additionally, we've put additional training and practices and other guidelines in place through some training at Go FinOps, which is our internal FinOps training and documentation site that we have as well. So yeah, in theory, there's a lot you can do. We've only started to scratch the surface on some of this. As Courtney mentioned, we've got a roadmap for the next 12 months. More of these are planned, but we're going after some of those big, big potential expensive areas if we're not careful with this one here. So back to the ugly with Courtney.
All right, thanks, Josh. Yeah, a good highlight there, and I think definitely a case where some things we already put in place meant that we only had a few days. When Josh and I first came into these roles, we were actually just reconciling our bill at the end of the month, so it would have been about 6 weeks before we would have caught that. So, definitely nice that it was only a few days, but still a lot of damage, as you guys know, that can be done in just a couple days. So excited to have something more proactive now in place versus reactive. So with that, we've done the good, the bad. It's time for the ugly. So I want to talk a little bit about FinOps intersections with other initiatives. And so, as you guys are probably seeing in your organizations too, value realization can be slow in this. There's a lot of overlapping accountabilities and priorities. There's different timelines that each team has, as well as resource and work prioritization. For us, I feel like we've got twice as much work as we have people to do it. So that prioritization and resource allocation is a continual conversation. I popped up here just a few other areas that I also have accountability for: application portfolio management, software license and compliance, and enterprise patching and vulnerability management. And I would not necessarily recommend grouping all of these things together. I think they make sense for General Mills based off of where we're at in our cloud transformation right now to be lumped together, but again, obviously organization dependent. But what I can tell you from my experience with these, as well as other groups with accounting, our finance team, is that there are some real benefits to be found wading into the muck of partnering with other teams. And so today I just want to highlight an example from our application portfolio management practice. And so the first thing is really as part of our cloud transformation and this data center migration from on-prem to the cloud, we've been able to identify in partnership with our cloud transformation team about a third of applications to retire. And it's true, these are not the huge applications, right? There was no surprise that we're decommissioning SAP or anything like that. But it does mean, right, that these are dollars we never spend in the cloud. So that's pretty awesome by itself. But it also has the added benefit of the fact that now that's a third less things that we need to track and manage out there. The second thing is, as part of the cloud transformation, we've really had an imperative, right? If there is no owner, the application does not get migrated. So this is fabulous from a FinOps perspective as far as, right, when we're doing our reporting, when we're enhancing that metadata, now we have an owner to talk to. We have a name to put beside it. We have a cost center to put beside it. So that's been a huge benefit as well. And then the third one is really building our optimization pipeline in tandem with application portfolio management. So we are doing, primarily a rehosting strategy with our applications. And so with that, we have a fast follow-on project around modernization. So, obviously the benefit of simplifying there, but also driving down costs. So really building that optimization pipeline to come in the future. And these are just, in the interest of time, I just wanted to pick out one APM to highlight for you guys today. But I would say this is true across the partnerships with finance, across software license and compliance, or some people may call it SAM, software asset management. Across the board, we feel like there is overhead. I would not lie about that as far as getting this coordinated effort together, understanding concurrent timelines, but there's a ton of value to be found in combining initiatives and really making sure that you can maximize and get the most out of your efforts. So with that, just a quick recap for all of you here today. We have, I think, hopefully you see, we've mostly avoided FinOOPS. There's been, obviously Josh highlighted a great example. Of course, there's been a few others along the way too, and I know there'll be some more, but our goal is really to keep those small and manageable. So from our perspective of the good, bad, and ugly, really the key takeaway is start early and scale as you grow. So mature that cloud practice as you're maturing your footprint in the cloud. Make sure you're providing value both by driving out waste as well as reducing risk. So it can be easy to forget about it or say, oh, we haven't had any cases like that. We can push that further down the roadmap. But really think about what that potential impact from risk can be too. And then last but not least, embrace the mess, because as you guys know, there is a lot of mess when we combine FinOps with other initiatives, but there's also a ton of value to be found too. So with that, would love to open it up for some Q&A.
Yeah, excellent. If anybody has any questions, thank you, first of all, Courtney and Josh, for this. Let's give you a big round of applause, because they have the guts to get up here and speak, so that's amazing. Make sure I don't get in front of the speaker. So if anybody does have any questions for them, I can pass the mic to you. And by the way, also, yay for Friends of FinOps. I think maybe one of my favorite things that I heard today. Hold on just a second.
Thank you. So awesome presentation, first of all, but also, what have been the top 3 methods you guys have used to get those on board who've been hesitant with either adopting FinOps or looking at FinOps or really saying, we don't have time for this, my roadmap's too long, blah, 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 insert excuse here, but what have been kind of the big methods that you guys have seen work to get people on board?
Yeah, I'll give a couple, and then maybe Josh, if you want to chime in too. I mean, one is, I would say, it's from the director perspective has been really important. So having that communication with all of the directors that have any type of spend in cloud, and making sure, in there I have asks for those directors. So I'll say, please ask your teams to make sure they build optimization into their sprints, or please make sure that they have it on their priorities for the year. That's been really critical, that there is an investment and a push from the top. I would combine that though with, trying to do some fun things like the FinOps Champion Award, and making it a little bit more fun. We also have it's very basic, but we have a SharePoint site where people go out and they log their optimization actions. And so being able to display that and people see their name, they see how much money they've saved, I think that's been really incentivizing. And I would say I think we have overall a really fabulous culture at General Mills where people want to do the right thing. If you give them the information, they usually will. So I'm sometimes maybe more surprised than I should be when I go meet with them, that they'll be like, oh, we've already done all this cost avoidance, we're making sure we scale responsibly. So it's been a combination, I would say, of up and down. And then I don't know if you want to add anything from the engineering tech perspective.
Yeah, I was just going to add the engineering side. We've got a great cloud engineering SRE culture at General Mills, and really been thinking about how we stand that up the right way and have an efficiency mindset. And as we're talking about with our cloud migration, phase one is really that rehost and getting it there, and then modernization after that. But at the same time, we've said we want to have cloud transparency as we move. So we're really breaking apart those applications and ensuring we've got ownership aside, no owner, no move. And it's not just an owner, but where does that sit in the organization? So as we talk about things like show back and potentially charge back down the road, we actually know where that would go from a cost perspective. And because of the rehost model early on, like we know there are some shared costs that are sitting in there and so forth. So those are areas that we know are a risk and an area to improve later, but we have good visibility on it. And our cloud engineering teams are being very thoughtful about where those are at and making sure that we identify them as this is a shared resource.
All right, I'm going to come over here.
Thank you. Earlier in the keynote, we learned that the number 2 concern is predicting future costs in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, number 1, have you encountered that challenge? And number 2, how are you planning on tackling it now that you're moving from really more of a rehost strategy into those more complicated transform before move pieces?
Yeah, we're on a journey there for sure, and that's definitely a nut that we have not fully cracked. Just to give you a little bit where we were at, I mean, when we came into our roles, the budget was the amount that we had signed the commit for with Google. That's all that was sitting there. It wasn't predictive of what teams actually said they were going to do. And so I don't think it'll surprise you to hear that we way overshot the initial budget when I came in. And so as part of that, really this year, as Josh mentioned, we have both an analytics component of spend, and then we have a data center that we're migrating as well. For the analytics portion of spend, we have asked everybody that's going to have a cloud spend above $25,000 to enter a budget, and we then are tracking against those budgets and asking them. So kind of we are not to the point of doing a chargeback, but we are asking those directors then to solve out. So if they go over the budget, they need to find the solve from that someplace else within their organization. I think for right now, we are still in the spot, right, where we're in a project operating mode for our data center migration. So being able to break it down or show the information by particular application, we have not tackled that yet. That is on our roadmap as we think about, we have a June to May fiscal year, so that is coming up this fall to really start talking about what is our spring planning going to be. How are we going to look at budgeting for those applications?
Yeah, I'll add that for some of the significant applications that are moving, like our SAP platform, for example, we have done more in-depth analysis around what that looks like and forecasting out the resources required, and including things like committed use discounts on top of those resources and so forth. And that's a core principle of how we're standing up SAP in cloud, just given the magnitude of it and the costs associated with it.
We are going to do one very short question because we are 1 minute. Really short, really short.
Yes. So very short question. I'm curious about Rogue Cloud and Shadow Cloud and the road that you've been on. If this has surfaced any, oh my gosh, someone's just expensing cloud and we didn't even have a line of sight into this.
We've had a little bit here and there, but nothing too major. I think part of this comes down to the culture of General Mills. I think we're very collaborative, and we like to figure out, does it fit our strategy and so forth. We have had a few marketing initiatives, for example, where they've stored some image assets in a different cloud, from a CDN perspective because it was convenient. But in general, pretty small spend and good intentions behind it.
All right, with that, folks, we are right on time for once today. Yay, yes. Thank you, Courtney and Josh, so very much. Next breakout starts in exactly 10 minutes, so you have 10 minutes to find your next place. At 11:40, you'll get started. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.